Welcome to DRM News Global, everyone.
Yeah.
And today, we're diving deep into the world of comedian, actor
Ike Barinholtz.
Ike Barinholtz.
This is going to be really interesting because we've got an interesting mix of stuff to work with today.
We do.
You know, we've got his appearance on Armchair Expert,
Right.
a great in-depth interview, and then this fascinating kind of profile piece that really kind of dug into his daily life.
Right.
And some of his upcoming projects. So
It is going to be, I think, a very multifaceted look at this guy.
What's our mission today?
I think the goal with this DRM News Global Deep Dive is to really give you a sense of all the different parts of Barinholtz's career.
Okay.
You know, like how he even got his start in comedy. What were the things that really shaped his sense of humor, the people he's worked with, this kind of incredible network of talent, and then also just, you know, expect some unexpected stories. And what he's working on lately. Yeah, this is going to be really cool.
Yeah.
So where does a comedic force like Ike Barinholtz even begin? Like so many comedic talents.
Right.
His story starts in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah. And he was really immersed in the kind of legendary improv scene.
That's right.
Honing his skills at places like Improv Olympic.
Right.
Now IO Theater.
IO Theater.
And also Second City.
Right.
It's almost a rite of passage, isn't it?
Yeah.
For so many comedic actors.
That's where a lot of people kind of cut their teeth. And it's also so important
Yeah.
to make those early connections.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so much of show business about who you know.
Absolutely.
And the relationships you build. And he built some really important foundational relationships during that time, you know, with people like Amy Poehler and Jack McBrayer.
Okay. But his training wasn't confined to Chicago.
No, not at all.
He kind of took a leap across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
His time with Boom Chicago.
But
In Amsterdam.
yeah.
This sounds like a really pivotal experience. What stood out about that?
Well, what I think is so interesting about his time in Amsterdam is just the sheer density of future stars. He was working with, I mean, you think about it.
Yeah.
Jordan Peele, Jason Sudeikis, Seth Meyers, Amber Ruffin, all were part of that Boom Chicago troupe. And you kind of wonder, you know, how that intense environment shaped their individual comedic styles and even maybe their future partnerships.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like a comedy think tank. You can just imagine creative energy in that space. And it seems like his comedic palette was really broad.
That's right.
Even before all that, he was drawing inspiration from some unexpected places.
He was.
Yeah.
So
he's talked about his love for what he called hard comedies.
yeah.
Right? The kind that push boundaries, go for big laughs, things like Blazing Saddles, National Lampoon's Vacation, Trading Places. But then, more surprisingly, he was also...
This is the thing that gets me really interested. He was really deeply influenced by mafia films.
Yeah.
And especially Goodfellas.
Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not the first film...
You wouldn't think so? No.
That comes to mind when you think comedy.
Yeah.
What was it about that movie that resonated with him comedically?
Well, I think it's really fascinating because it shows his ability to appreciate the dark humor that is woven into a movie like that. He talks about actually laughing throughout Goodfellas.
Really?
You know, and he has this great anecdote where he talks about how Paulie's line, you know, we got to go on a diet tomorrow, we eat sandwiches. Like, that's his mantra for his weight loss efforts, you know, and so it just suggests a comedic sensibility that can really appreciate absurdity, even in a, you know, very serious narrative, which I think really informs his own work.
That's a great point. It's like finding the human and the often flawed element in any situation. And that is often at the heart of a lot of great comedy.
That's right.
From those early influences, he moved into the world of television with things like Mad TV and The Mindy Project.
Right.
How did those experiences contribute to his trajectory?
Well, I think Mad TV was really crucial in honing his sketch comedy skills. You know, it's that high-pressure environment that really forces you to be quick, versatile, fearless in your comedic choices. And then the Mindy Project allowed him to kind of showcase his talents in this character-driven sitcom and reach this broader audience. And all of these roles definitely raised his profile, but maybe not in a way you might expect.
Which is interesting because it kind of perfectly segues into grocery shopping trip anecdote,
Yes.
which really paints a picture
Mm.
of his kind of level of recognition
Yeah.
or famousness, as it's been called.
Yeah.
What happened during that trip?
Yeah. Okay, so the scene unfolds at Farm Boy Produce. And the cashier kind of looks at him and goes, "Are you famous?"
Straight up.
Yeah. And then this one question becomes this recurring
Hmm.
motif as he navigates the Fairfax Farmers Market. He gets asked again at various vendors by a security guard. He even gets asked this question by a random person walking by who takes his picture, just in case.
Wow. And he had that great line about maybe they thought he was John Cena coming back from the woods.
Right.
Right. So it's all these everyday encounters where there's this sense of uncertainty and then this complete shift
Yeah.
when he interacts with people in the industry.
Luxury.
Right.
Yeah.
So just moments after, all these ambiguous encounters, he runs into what he called a couple agency bigwigs. And they give him this enthusiastic,
Bro hug.
instant recognition.
Yeah.
So it really highlights this
That's
middle
fun.
ground he's in.
Yeah.
He's not
Mm-hmm.
a ubiquitous household name,
Right.
but he's certainly someone very highly regarded
Mm-hmm.
within Hollywood. So this idea that he's often recognized by face
Mm-hmm.
or name or project, but rarely.
Mm.
All three
Right.
really does encapsulate his
Mhm.
current status.
It does.
He's a working actor and writer with a huge body of work.
Mm.
And it seems like really deeply respected
Mm-hmm.
within those industry circles.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like a
So-
sweet spot in a way, you know?
sort of.
It's sort of. That you have
Nah.
enough recognition to
Get those.
attention from people, but not so much that you can't live your life,
Exactly.
that you sort of
Sort of.
stifled by public
I was
scrutiny.
going to say maybe a degree
Yeah.
of creative freedom
That's right.
that maybe more intensely scrutinized A-listers lack.
Because he can...
Yeah, he can take on more diverse projects, unconventional projects,
That's right.
without that level of expectation.
And that's really led to some opportunities to collaborate with them.
It has.
Giants in
Yeah, this is where it gets really good.
comedy and cinema.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these collaborations. So first, Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks, History of the World Part 2. What was that experience like for him?
From all accounts, a masterclass in comedy.
Okay.
I mean, he described having conversations with Mel Brooks about, foundational elements of what makes something funny, including, fart jokes,
Right.
fighting Nazis, which really speaks to Brooks's enduring comedic spirit.
Yeah, fart jokes and fighting Nazis
Ah.
doesn't get more fundamental than that.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, okay. He also had the opportunity to work with Norman Lear
Oh,
on those live television special of All in the Family.
right.
This must have been a completely different kind of experience.
It was, yeah.
Bridging generations.
Yeah.
A
Chance to not just perform,
Right.
but inhabit
Yeah.
these iconic characters
Yeah.
and be part of this live television event with a true legend. And he
Yeah.
actually recounts a real sense of camaraderie
Mm-hmm.
that he had with
Uh.
Norman Lear, even sharing a late night smoke
Wow.
after the first live broadcast.
That's a great image. And then
incredible.
Kelly-
I know.
He also got to work with Martin Scorsese on the studio.
Yeah,
That's a whole other stratosphere.
it is. Yeah.
Oh, iconic filmmaking. How did that collaboration even come about?
Well, he was, understandably, nervous to work
Yeah.
the director of that caliber.
Yeah.
And one anecdote he was talking about, a scene where his character had to deliver this overly effusive compliment to the director character. And Scorsese himself offered the perfect line suggestion, which was, well, people always come up to me and say, you're the reason I got into movies.
My goodness.
So it just shows this real self-awareness from Scorsese.
Yeah, and this great sense of humor
Yeah.
about his own legacy.
Yeah.
And then Barinholtz's reaction to it was priceless.
Yeah.
He was like, oh my God, I'm about to become one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's pure gold. Now, let's pivot to some
Yeah.
of these recent projects. So first,
Yeah.
Running Point on Netflix.
Yeah.
So he's not only,
So he stars in it, but he also co-created it
okay, and
Oh.
executive produced it.
and executive produces it, along with Kate Hudson. And the premise sounds really good. A comedic look at a family-owned basketball franchise in L.A. It
Yeah.
sounds ripe for satire.
He told a funny anecdote
He did.
about Kate Hudson and his father on set.
Well, apparently Kate Hudson, in a moment of playful spontaneity, insisted that Barinholtz's father kiss her on the lips during filming.
Wow.
A
That's a memorable moment.
memorable moment. Now, the project I'm really eager to talk about is The Studio on Apple TV Plus, which just recently premiered.
Yeah.
And features him alongside co-creator Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen, yeah.
What can you tell me about the concept?
So The Studio is really a sharp satire of the whole Hollywood movie-making machine. It's been described as a comedic take in the vein of The Larry Sanders Show, The Player, Tropic Thunder, so it's suggesting a blend of behind-the-scenes absurdity and industry lampooning.
Okay, so Barinholtz plays Sal Saperstein, who's described as a hot mess studio exec, prone to excess.
A hot mess studio exec in Hollywood. That's
a target-rich environment.
A target-rich environment for satire
Yeah.
and the Rakai. It seems like his collaboration with Seth Rogen, given their previous work, must have been a very strong creative partnership.
Yeah, what's Rogen's perspective?
So Rogen holds Barinholtz
Yeah.
in very high regard. He called him a comic actor, and he uses great analogy. He said he's like a jazz musician, emphasizing that he's got this strong technical foundation, but then this incredible improvisational ability and a real eye for detail, which Rogen found really essential, especially in France. This really demanding shoot.
In what way? Demanding what way?
Well, they were doing a lot of, very complex one-take scenes. And for the initial episodes, they had Martin Scorsese himself directing those.
Oh, my gosh.
So imagine that pressure of trying to deliver, improvise effectively.
Yeah. Within these long, unbroken takes under the watchful eye. Oof. Alleged.
That sounds intense. What's the dynamic like between their characters, Sal and Rogen's character, Matt?
Well, Rogen described it really well. He said they were going for two idiots. One idiot thinking he's a little smarter than the other idiot. He suggested that. That's their on-screen relationship. And maybe even reflects their off-screen dynamic to some degree.
That's a recipe for comedic gold, and it kind of aligns with shared sensibility that they seem to have. But they call hard jokes with their philosophy there.
Barinholtz explains that. He, Rogen, and the collaborators are really committed to a style of comedy with a capital C, focus on creating big laughs, and they kind of sum it up by saying, stupid people saying stupid things in 9 seconds. They're not afraid to push boundaries and embrace this kind of uninhibited and even slightly outrageous style of humor.
It's refreshing to hear that commitment.
It is.
To unapologetic comedy in a world that can sometimes feel overly cautious. Now, shifting gears a bit, our sources also gave us some interesting insights into Barinholtz's personal life.
They did.
And particularly his passion for cooking.
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
This is a really interesting juxtaposition.
It is.
He openly discusses this eating problem.
His struggles with food, His eating problem. He even mentions using Ozempic.
Right. Yet he has this deep and dedicated interest in cooking.
That's right.
He says he cooks dinner for his family 5 times a week and approaches it with a real sense of care and precision.
He does.
We even got a rather detailed account of him making a chopped cheese.
That's right.
And he's so particular.
He's got his, very specific ingredients. He's got to have iceberg lettuce over anything woke.
Right. He's carefully selecting his avocados.
That's right.
So
seems like he's a real enthusiast,
He is a true culinary enthusiast.